So what's the likelihood that Netflix will make history at this year's Academy Awards? Well, let's bring in Stu Zakim for some expert insight. He's the owner of Bridge Strategic Communications, and he's been a member of the Academy since 1995. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rachelle, for having me.
So as we saw, there are lots of buzz for their market performance, but what about their performance in the eyes of the Oscars? How has Netflix fared historically with the Academy?
Well, it's kind of a big obstacle with the old guard of the Academy and the new guard. 2 years ago in Roma, which was Netflix's really big push, and received 10 nominations last year, there was a lot of outcry from people, including Steven Spielberg, that perhaps Netflix films, since they were designed for television, shouldn't qualify for the Oscars. Now, that certainly set a lot of debate going back and forth. And what you're finding is Netflix is becoming a real home for filmmakers. They're providing money to make movies. Look at The Irishman. It started at Paramount. Paramount kind of pulled the plug when the budget ran too high. Netflix stepped in, gave them what is reported $179 million or so. And the film has gone on to, as you mentioned, win a lot of nominations.
So then how does Netflix compare to how other streaming services are doing this award season?
They dominated the field. The other streamers, Amazon, doesn't really have an entry that made it into the nominations. They did campaign for some of their films. Adam Driver, who was nominated for Marriage Story, is also in The Report, which is an amazing film, but didn't get the same kind of push that Netflix gives its pictures.
Now, we have also seen some pushback in terms of how Netflix is sort of adjusting its production process to compete with traditional festivals and award seasons. What are we seeing there?
Well, Netflix is in a really unique position. Unlike studios who depend on the theatrical releases and those windows and have to time it to make the various film festivals that really kick off with Sundance, which is going to be happening very soon, they can sit on a picture until it's ready for what they want it to be. So even though if they make a film that they normally would release earlier, if they know it's festival worthy, they can hold it back. So it hasn't really affected their production schedule. It's really more about how they time when they're going to release the film.
And we certainly saw that was part of that industry reaction that you mentioned to this changing landscape that now features streaming services so dominantly. Could we potentially see more of a changing of the guard and perhaps in the voting process?
This year makes a statement bigger than anything I could say. The fact that Netflix did lead the field in nominations, I think, indicates where the future is going. And if I'm a filmmaker, I want the luxury and to make the kind of movie I want to make. The studios, since they are dependent on theatrical releases for revenue, don't give them normally that kind of freedom. And once again, going back to Scorsese, I can't imagine any studio would allow him to release a 3.5-hour film for theaters. However, when you're watching it you're on home, and you also have to look at the way people have changed how they consume content. Theaters were the primary source when movies began and for the longest period of time, but now people are consuming it via mobile. And I'm a movie maker. I want my film seen by the largest audience possible, and Netflix and the other streamers are providing that platform.
And they're certainly not sparing any expense, because according to Bloomberg Intelligence, Netflix's content budget for 2020 is $18.5 billion. Now, that's bigger than the annual GDP of some countries, and far ahead of the next biggest spenders. You have Amazon at $8.5 billion and Apple TV at $6 billion. But how do you see this paying off as the streaming space gets more crowded?
Well, Netflix was smart because they got in early and kind of made their service to generic. So everyone, look at the difference in subscription rates between Netflix and Hulu or Netflix and Amazon. They are clearly dominating because they were the first in the field. And as in any industry, first in usually keeps their place, and they certainly have.
All right, well, thank you so much. Stu Zakim there, owner of Bridge Strategic Communications and a member of the Academy.